wanted to get started and welcome you to our webinar on successful marketing for your business. I would like to thank RIT and NTID for interpreting today. We have Rachel Green and Byron Beam. And again, just make sure you can see them. I'd like to introduce our presenter, Scott Ladin. He's a certified SCORE mentor in our chapter and one in Arizona. I forget which location. Scott will tell you about that. He is a global marketing business development professional with over 35 years experience, ranging from startups to Fortune companies. His background includes project and product management, marketing, technical communications, and business development. So that's just a brief overview of what Scott has done over his career. And he's here today to share that and help you market your small business. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Scott. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Scott Ladin. It's my pleasure to present this session on marketing for small businesses. My focus is going to be to help you develop a plan to acquire customers. And in order to do that, we're going to go through several different steps and marketing tactics and how you would deploy them. And we're going to talk about how much to budget for marketing and how to create and build a customer acquisition plan. Before I do that, though, just a very quick promo on SCORE. Many of you know that we are available for one-on-one mentoring. While we love doing it face-to-face these days, we're doing everything virtually, either by telephone or by email or by video. The workshops that we offer comprise almost every discipline that you can think of regarding business operations. So starting businesses, marketing businesses, business planning, finance and accounting, and so on and so forth. I encourage you to do two things. Check out the greaterrochester.score.org website for the latest and greatest in webinars that are being offered by the chapter. And also check out the score.org webpage and website for just a variety of resources, including webinars, blogs, and so on and so forth. So please take some time to go out and check out those sites. You will be receiving a PDF of the presentation today, and it is also being recorded. So a link will be posted in the Rochester SCORE YouTube channel. And we can also send you a link to that as well. So that's kind of a background on SCORE. In terms of the presentation today, we're going to be doing some math. Don't worry, it's not integral calculus or anything like that, but we'll be doing your basic 4-function math. And that's because marketing is probably more about math than anything else. It's all about knowing your numbers. And the math behind every successful marketer is essential, because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And those numbers apply to having a really good understanding of what's working and what's not working in terms of marketing. So that said, the goal for today is develop a customer acquisition plan. And I'm going to use a small business, a fictitious small business called Yum Froyo. And I probably will babble that a couple of times because it's hard on the tongue. But Yum Froyo is a fictitious yogurt company that we're going to use as an example. And we're going to start out with talking about how to build some powerful marketing concepts. We're going to go into some detail on estimating key customer metrics. Again, we're very focused on numbers and quantifying things. So we really have a good way of judging what works and what's not working. And once we have our metrics, we can convert the metrics into a sales plan and a customer plan. And then once we have a customer plan, we can evaluate some different marketing ideas and how much it's going to cost to actually acquire our customers, and understand if those cost estimates are meaningful and are going to translate into profitability. So that's the plan for today. And we're going to base our thinking around a pro forma statement, profit and loss statement, for our business, right? So we're going to anticipate that we're going to be able to achieve $30,000 in total monthly revenue. But the question that we're trying to answer is, how much do we need to spend in marketing to achieve that? And can we achieve a net profit in a positive way? This example without marketing here is showing a $6,500 net profit, 22%, which is nice, but we haven't figured in the marketing budget. So the important thing is understanding what our costs are going to be and what relative percentage of those costs is applied to the revenue. So you see revenue is 100%, and then every expense that we have is related as some relative proportion of revenue. And that's where we're gonna start. And let's kind of kick it off with first a big question is, why do businesses fail? And I'll tell you this, that statistically, 75% of new businesses are going to fail in 2 years, and 90% are going to fail in 5, and 95% are going to fail in 10 years. So why do businesses fail? Well, they fail because they don't have enough revenue, enough top line revenue. And why do they not have enough top line revenue? Generally because they just don't have enough customers. And the reason they don't have enough customers is because they don't have a viable, proven acquisition plan. So while you get really excited about your business, and in this case, we're all excited about opening up our frozen yogurt store, even though it's probably about 25 degrees here in New York, you're hoping that people are going to come in and buy from you. But at the end of the day, hope is not a strategy. And so we really need to be focused and disciplined in our approach to marketing. So with that, we typically start off thinking about our revenue estimates, right? How much revenue can we bring in? And if your original estimates are faulty and you're not bringing in enough money, then the bottom line is, as a business owner, you're going to be writing a check to cover your expenses. And we certainly don't want to do that. So what typically happens is, if revenue estimates don't meet target goals and they come in below plan, what do customers typically do, or businesses? They start to cut costs. And what's typically the first thing to go? Hey, we reduce our marketing expenses. Well, you reduce marketing expenses, and guess what? Your revenue falls further because you have fewer customers coming in. And so businesses end up in this endless cycle of cutting costs, cutting marketing, revenues falling. And of course, we all know where this ends up, far, far deeper in the red than any of us would like to. So the lack of having a focused marketing plan, customer acquisition plan that drives revenue, is really the root cause of a lot of business failures at this point. So we're going to try to avoid that with our customer acquisition plan. So how do we get there from here, as they say? Well, we're going to start with building these powerful marketing concepts. And that's important, and it's going to be the thrust of this particular section of our presentation today. But we're going to start out by asking a very basic question. What is marketing? Very simply, it's changing behavior by changing beliefs. So marketing is, everything in marketing is about changing behavior, changing beliefs. Everything that's ever been done in marketing and is being done today, will ever be done in marketing, is all around this basic concept of changing beliefs, so we can change customers' behavior. So if we think about my frozen yogurt store, and I'm wanting to get somebody to come in and buy from me, that's a behavior change. It's a behavior change because they haven't bought from me before. They may be buying from somebody else, or they may not be buying yogurt at all. But if they become a new customer, it's because I managed to change their behavior. And when we talk about changing behavior, there's 3 things that we can do, right? Or 3 things we need to focus on, I should say. Whose behavior are you trying to change, right? We're targeting a particular audience, right? What is the behavior that we want to change? And how are we going to change that behavior, right? So what are the mechanisms by which we're going to actually get somebody to come into my frozen yogurt store And whatever small business you have, what are the behaviors that you need to change in order to get folks to come and obtain your product or your service? So when we think about behavior changes, there's three types of behaviors that we need to think about, right? So the first is switching from another product provider that may already be part of what your customers are using. So in my world of frozen yogurt, there happens to be another company not too far away called Yogurt Technology, right? And so we want to get these customers to change from Yogurt Tech to Yum Froyo, right? So that's one behavior change. The second is getting them to switch from a substitute product that they're already using. So people are having dessert, but they're having pies for dessert instead of yogurt. And we'd like them to start thinking about having yogurt for dessert instead of pies. And then the third one is starting a new behavior. Well, maybe they don't even have dessert after dinner. So we want them to start eating dessert. And more specifically, we want them to have yogurt for dessert. So these are the three kinds of behaviors that we can try to adjust, right? Switching from another a competitive product or service, switching from a substitute product or service, or basically starting to do something brand new that they're not doing today. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to introduce a framework for us to use as a platform. And we're going to talk about three possible campaigns that I might run to begin to drive traffic to my store, right? And so it begins with targeting the audience. And here it's very important to be as specific as possible. One of the other tools that we use is called a business model canvas. And in that business model canvas, we focus on two things, which is customer targeting, customer segments, and what we'll call value proposition, which we're going to allude to throughout today's presentation at all. But this is a great framework to begin to use. And there's 4 boxes in this framework, which we'll walk through for each of these sample campaigns. So the first campaign here is just kind of an overview of what that framework looks like. So there's things that people do today. All behaviors are based on beliefs. And so what is it that people believe today? And whether these beliefs are conscious or subconscious, nothing's done by accident, right? So there's always a belief that's driving people's behavior. And what we want to do is change that belief today to some belief that they have tomorrow. And we do that by introducing this belief changing idea. And essentially, this is the value proposition, right? What is it about your business that is so compelling, that solves a problem, addresses a need, or fills a want, that will cause somebody to believe something different from today so that they actually do something differently tomorrow? And that's the whole goal, is to get your customers, or your target market, I should say, to do something that they're not doing today that is beneficial to your business, right? So things that can cause this belief changing idea to become top of mind are things like, posting on a public corkboard and tearing off a strip, or a 10-year-old's lemonade stand, or a Facebook ad, or a direct mail piece. All of these things are ways in which we can create changes in belief through a very compelling belief changing idea or value proposition. So this is the basic framework. And now I'm going to take you through some different campaigns that take advantage of this particular framework, these 4 boxes, right? So I'm going to start with what we call a now open campaign. So anticipating that I want people to come into my store when we're open, I have to begin to do something. And I'm targeting yogurt lovers who live within 1 to 2 miles of my Yum Froyo store, right? So what are they doing today? Well, they're buying frozen yogurt at yogurt shops outside their local neighborhood. So they're going to Yogurt Tech, we talked before, which is probably 3 to 4 miles away from them. But we're trying to create a new belief that there's something more local, right? So while the closest one today is 3 to 4 miles away, we want them to realize that there's a frozen yogurt Yum Froyo right in their neighborhood. And so how do we do that? We create a message that says, hey, we're here, right? Yum Froyo offers delicious frozen yogurt right in your neighborhood. You don't need to travel. The value proposition here, quite simply, is one of convenience, right? So it's simple because awareness is easy to generate and it can't be disputed. But if I try to make a product claim, people may or may not believe it. So I can do a direct mail piece introducing Yum Froyo as a yoga shop, as a yogurt shop right here in their neighborhood. So it's kind of easy to communicate it. And so that's the belief that we're trying to create so that they do something tomorrow. So that's the Now Open campaign. Let's take a look at another campaign, which is targeting nearby residents that have dessert at home. So what we're trying to do here is get people to go out of their homes for their dessert, right? So it's a little bit more complex, but we're going to follow the same framework. So what we know is that our target market does have dessert, but they do have dessert at home. And what their concern is, what they believe today is it's just not worth the hassle of going out for yogurt, right? So in order to get them to do something different, we want to change their belief that it's worth the extra trip because everyone gets to have just what they want. So the idea here is that they have dessert at home, but perhaps they're having pie for dessert, but there's only pumpkin pie. Well, guess what? Not everybody likes pumpkin pie, so not everybody's happy, and there's a want or a need that needs to be fulfilled so that I can have what I want, mom can have what she wants, the kids can have what they want. So what do? I create a value proposition, a mind-changing idea that basically says, look, Yum Froyo has 8 different flavors and 24 different toppings. Everybody can have whatever it is that they want. So that's the new belief. So rather than having dessert at home where not everybody's happy, it's worth the effort to go out and get exactly what you want. And that's what we do. We ask them to come to Yum Froyo for their dessert. And again, it's within the neighborhood. So it's an example of trying to get somebody to come away from a substitute product. So that's the second of our example campaigns. I'll go to a third example campaign. And this is targeting health conscious residents. So again, very specific in terms of what is the want, what is the need, or what is the problem that we're solving, right? So the first one had to do with awareness, right? Making people aware that there's something closer. Second one had to do with differentiation and solving that need for everybody getting what they want. And here we're solving a need or a want for a healthful dessert type that may not be visible or available at this point. So today, because they're health conscious, my target audience doesn't eat yogurt. Well, that's not going to help me at all, right? Because we want to sell yogurt. And why is that? Well, because they believe yogurt is too fattening. Well, we want to try to fix that problem. We want to tell them that they can enjoy a delicious dessert yogurt that's low in calories. So what am I going to do? I'm going to introduce a new product category, a sorbet product where you can build your own sorbet sundae, and it's only 150 calories. So by introducing this new value proposition where you can get a delicious dessert and still be health conscious, I can hopefully introduce people to Yum Froyo where they can get the satisfaction of a great tasting dessert with low calorie. So that's kind of the approach, right? Here we're adding a new product line so that we can entice that particular customer segment. All right, so some examples of some campaigns, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to translate this into the acquisition plan as we go forward. But I want to pause for a moment because we've been talking about some ideas here for campaigns. The question is, how do you know if your mind-changing idea, or more specifically, your value proposition, is a good idea? Well, you can talk to your friends and your family, but more than likely, you're going to get a bit of a biased response. Why? Because they're your friends and your family. Really, what you want is an unbiased survey with at least one competitive benchmark. So for example, if you ask questions only about your store in your survey, you're not likely to get real answers. So maybe have a blurb about a competitor in a positive light and ask people if that interests them, and then talk about your store or your business anonymously and then compare their response. I had a client who is in the food truck business, was opening up a food truck business, and she actually took her survey, this was pre-COVID days, out to a couple of different park areas and ran a survey of people as they were walking by. And she did just this, right? She asked questions, talked about other food trucks in the area, and got a sense of what people's interests were and willingness to buy, and how much they'd pay for some of her services. So that was her way of testing things out. If you have some additional money, you can conduct focus groups via a market research firm. A little more money, you can do some concept testing again through a market research firm, or you can conduct a fairly extensive test market in general. And it depends on the reach and the type of product that you have. I recently came upon a resource called people.fish. And what these folks will do is actually create online internet-driven surveys to targeted audience. It's a very reasonable price. This one client I had, I think, paid $100 for a setup, and then I think it was $15 or $20 per email that went out against the database. So it seemed to be a very cost-effective approach. Again, it's people.fish that I recently learned about. So you want to know if your idea is good, you want to test it, and then you'll be able to make some sense of really what the viability is of your business going forward. So continuing on then. So we talked about our marketing concepts and our marketing ideas. Now we want to get down to some of the nitty gritty in terms of customer metrics, right? And as a business owner, your main job is to create customers. But before you do that, you need to understand your customers and what those metrics, what the metrics are. So generally speaking, there are only two ways to grow sales, right? You can either increase your customers, and by that, I mean, you can get new ones, or the ones that you can keep them longer. The other way is to increase the average spend per customer. So which means that you can get them to buy your product or service more frequently, or you can get them to spend more on each kind of purchase, right? Our main focus here is going to be on acquiring customers, because typically that's about 80% of your marketing opportunity, right? So that's kind of the direction we're headed. We're going to focus on the left side here of getting new customers and perhaps even increasing the retention rate. So digging into the metrics, there's basically 4 key metrics that we'll talk about, and we're going to use averages, right? Because some customers spend a lot, some don't spend very much, some stay longer, some stay shorter, some have fewer opportunities to buy, some have more opportunities to buy. So we're going to work on averages, right? And we're going to start with thinking about the average spend per purchase occasion. Every time someone comes in and buys something, how much are they going to spend? And we're going to talk about the average purchase occasions per month, right? So if you think back to the P&L that we were looking at before, we're working on a monthly view of our marketing plan, right? So what is the average purchase occasions per month? How many times does someone buy your product or services? What's the average customer lifetime in a month? So if you have a yogurt store, how long will people continue to come in and buy my product, right? Interesting here, because the next one is the average customer lifetime value. So what is the return? What is the average dollar value of my customers as they stay with me? Because over some period of time, you need to at least achieve that customer lifetime value. So if you think about how this may differ from one business to the other, let's compare on one end a car dealership, right? They have to achieve a customer lifetime value in one single transaction, because customers aren't going to come in monthly and buy cars. They may come in every 2, 3, 5, or 10 years, right? On the other hand, business like my Yum Froyo yogurt business, I need to have repeat customers in order to achieve that lifetime value. I need to have people coming in multiple times per month. So that's how it may differ from one business to the other. And so your business model needs to be top of mind as you think about these metrics. So we're going to start out, we're going to take a look at Yum Froyo here, and some research that I did before I started the business, from things like industry associations or talking to people and and talking to competitors or watching competitors. I came up with the following metrics. So every time someone comes in to buy yogurt, they're typically going to spend $8. And they're typically going to come in 3 times a month. So my average customer lifetime in months is also 10, right? So the 3 things I know based on research are $8 per purchase, 3 purchases per month, and my customers are going to stay with me for 10 months, giving me an average lifetime sales. I use that word, it's italicized here, average lifetime sales of $240. Okay, but that's not really the important number. Sales is important, but it's not the most important number. What we want to understand here is the lifetime value. So it's value versus sales. When we talk about value, we're talking about gross profit, right? So gross profit is our sales minus the cost of goods, the cost to deliver that product or service. So for my frozen yogurt shop, the other things that make up the product are the cup and the spoons and the napkins and so on and so forth, in addition to the yogurt. So if I go back to my profit and loss benchmark that I looked at earlier, right, it basically tells me that my gross profit is 70%, right? So after I deliver the product, I have 70% of the sales available to cover my expenses down below, right? So what that means is that I have a lifetime value of $170. So that's the important number, right? It's the number after your cost of goods, after the costs of direct labor and direct materials to deliver that product or service. So that's the number that we're going to focus on. Okay, so let's do a quick summary, right? So based on my research, I know that the average spend per purchase is $8. The average purchase occasions are 3. The average customer lifetime is 10 months, and the average customer lifetime value is 170. Just pausing for a sip of water. Any questions? I'll pause for a second just to see if there's any questions about where we've gone so far. I don't see any in the queue.
No, there are no questions as of right now, Scott.
Okay, thanks, Tamara. Okay, so let's move on. So now our next step here is to translate the sales plan into a customer plan, the sales plan being the goal of $30,000 a month, right? So that's critical now, because we're not looking for dollars as much as we're going after people and customers and working towards changing their behaviors as a marketer, because that's what you can control and that's what you can do. So now we're going to look at how to build this customer plan. Right. So as I said, my goal is $30,000 a month. The question is, how many customers do I need to achieve $30,000 every single month? Right. And I also know that I'm not going to have the same customers every month. Some people are going to leave because customers have a lifetime period, right? Have a very defined lifetime. So the 2 questions I need to answer are, how many total customers do I need to have? And how many customers do I need to replace every month? So how many do I need to get? And how many do I need to maintain a level of customer activity? So we'll do a little bit of arithmetic here, right? So we're going to start out and we're going to remind ourselves that the average spend per purchase is $8, and the average purchase occasions are 3, right? So $24 in a month per customer. All right. So I go to the next step, which basically says, all right, well, if I'm trying to earn 30,000 a month top line, and each customer is going to spend 24 bucks, that means I need to have a total of 1,250 customers. And these need to be active customers, right? So let's talk about active users. So businesses have customers that visit, let's say, every 3 years, and may not be active at any given point in time. So we'll consider active customers as those who are, visiting your business within, say, a reasonable 6-month period. So from that perspective, I can feel comfortable that I need 1,250 active customers every month, right? But I still don't know how many replacements I need, because I know that people are going to fade away from me. They may go back to Yogurt Tech. They may go back to eating pies. They may move out of my target area. Who knows? But we are going to lose customers. So I have to replace them, because I need that 1,250 every month in order to achieve my $30,000. Okay. So question is then, what percentages of customers are going to be lost every month? So remember, I said that the average lifetime of a customer is 10 months. So what does that mean? Well, it basically says this. Look, if I have 100 customers and they're all going to be only around for 10 months, in 10 months, I have 0 customers. So working the averages, again, because these are all averages, I may have, people leave at the rate of 15% or 7%, who knows? So working on an average, because that's the best we can do when we're forecasting, is basically say, look, I'm going to lose about 10 every month as I go from 100 down to 0. So I'm going to work on the hypothesis that I'm going to lose 10% customers every month, which means I need to replace for my yogurt store 125 customers. That said, it's really a good time for a reality check. Can I even get 1,250 customers to get started with and maintain along the life of my business? So we're going to have to do a little bit of math here to ascertain whether 1,250 customers in my target geographic area is even possible. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do some analysis, right? So I'm targeting a 3-mile area for my shop, and that's about it, because anything beyond that, people are just not going to drive to me. They'll go to some place that's closer. So again, based on some research that I've done, I'm estimating that there's 40,000 households in the target area that I'm addressing. And I'm also guessing, using industry associated information, that says 15% of households purchase yogurt at least twice a year. So I'm going to do a quick math here that says 15% of the 40,000 gives me 6,000 clients, 6,000 customers. Okay. So if I take 1,250 and I divide it by 6,000, that basically says, look, I need to gain 18% market share in order to achieve my target number of customers. Well, 18% market share is not too bad. Typically, market shares for these kinds of stores would range in the 20 to 40% range. So I'm in good shape. I have a reasonable probability of achieving my goal. Now, that said, if the research had indicated that there's only 1,500 households, that means I would need roughly 85% of the market. So in reality, I would not have been able to achieve a reasonable market share, because 85% of the market share just isn't real. So it's important that you have these kinds of data, these kinds of metrics against which you can measure your expectations and your goals. So in this case, certainly seems realistic to get an 18% market share. Okay. So we can now take the next step. We know that our marketing, our market goals and our revenue streams are somewhat realistic because we haven't opened our store yet, right? But we've used some very solid metrics to make our assumptions. And so they're the kinds of metrics that we can measure against as we go forward. and then revise those metrics based on the reality of how people respond to the marketing ideas and the customer acquisition programs that we're going to put in place. And so these now become the secrets to successful marketing. So begin with what we call developing propitious marketing ideas. A new word, big word. Basically means ideas that have a high probability of success. So you want to try things to see what works best for your business. You don't want to try things that don't seem to have a likelihood of success. You know, marketing for any business is tough enough. You know, you're fighting competitors because everybody wants to get their unfair share of customers. It's sort of like baseball, right? So the best hitters, if they're lucky, you know, get 3 hits out of every 10 times at bat, and the other 7 times they're going to fail. They're going to make an out. So you may try 10 different marketing ideas and maybe 3 of them are going to work. So you want to focus on ideas that have that likelihood of success. So how do we do that? Right? We begin by conducting affordable experiments and being disciplined in measuring the results. So for example, if I have $5,000 to spend on a direct mail piece, I don't want to spend it all on one effort because I don't know if it's going to work. So I might try something less, you know, some fewer numbers of direct mail pieces, fewer addresses, but it may cost me more per piece. Well, that's fine. It doesn't matter because I want to try and test a small amount to measure the results and see if it works. And if it does work, then I'll spend more. If it doesn't work, I won't spend more on it. So bottom line is testing it and being disciplined and then doing what works and less of what doesn't work. Okay.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Scott, we've got a question. They want to know, what is the connection between 20-month customer life and 10% replacement rate?
20 months customer life. So again, if I think of the example, if I have 100 customers, and I'm going to lose them over 20 months, how many customers am I going to lose per month? Well, that would suggest you're going to lose 5 customers every month, right? So you need to replace those customers, right? Make sense?
Yep, I would assume so.
Okay, all right. It's sort of a fuzzy logic concept, and I know I struggled with it initially. But if you think about it in those terms, it becomes workable in the analysis, and you'll see that as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay. So let's start. I'm sorry, was there a comment?
No.
Okay, all right. So let's start talking about some of the types of marketing initiatives that we can implement. There's basically 2 kinds, right? Basically what we call inbound marketing and outbound marketing. Right. So I need these kinds of marketing methodologies to get my 1,250 customers and replace those 125 every month. So the first type we're going to talk about is what we call pull marketing, right? And pull marketing offers advice or information like web content or blogs and so on, with the expectation that customers will respond to what they've seen. So for example, when people search for a low-calorie yogurt, hopefully they'll find my website because I've done a really good job in my search engine optimization. They'll learn about for example, our Build Your Own Sunday promotion, and they'll come in and buy. So we're kind of pulling them in based on information that we're providing. The process is kind of slow because it takes time to build the traffic, but it keeps working, right? And it usually requires SEO, search engine optimization. So if you got a good Google ranking and people are seeing the website, I don't have to pay more for that, right? It's already embedded, although SEO does take a maintenance effort. And inbound marketing like this is really good for high information categories like business to business, that give customers lots of information like white papers or case studies before they buy. And those kinds of information, particularly in B2B, again, specifically target the value propositions that the businesses have that you're targeting. So we're always going back to understanding our customers and understanding their wants and their needs and their problems. And it all becomes part of your messaging, right? Your communication to your customers. Now, the other methodology is what we call push marketing or outbound marketing. And this is what's referred to as the madman style of pushing messages out, like a billboard or a Facebook ad or a postcard. These messages, these approaches push the messages into your brain. And it's quick because, you know, you can buy your audience, right? So when I say it's quick, I mean, you get rapid response to the things that you do, right? But you have to pay for those customers. And it only keeps working as long as you keep paying. So once you take the billboard down or remove the Facebook ad, no one's going to see your message anymore. So the key here is to use these in combination, right? So for most small businesses, you know, you can't do this yourself. It's too complex. So it often requires using a digital marketing company or an advertising agency because of the complexity, right? It just becomes too much for a small business owner to manage the platforms, the complexities of platforms like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn for that matter. It takes a focus and it takes a discipline. And, you know, quite frankly, most business owners want to do what they do. They want to work on their business, work in their business versus working on their business. So part of your marketing budget is recognizing that you have to pay for some of these kinds of services. So that said, both of these work together and as such will generally be more effective in combination. So having a website in combination with a Facebook ad, you know, will increase the efficiency and the conversion rates of your advertising dollars, which is a good segue into the next slide, which is, this is just a list of some of the kinds of things that, you know, you might use in terms of marketing tactics. And what's important to note here is the cost per action, the typical conversion rates, and the typical types of conversions. So, you know, I refer to type of conversion. I'll say, well, look, you know, a blog post or a LinkedIn post, you know, might generate a lead, but that lead isn't a paying customer, right? The e-commerce component associated with that will lead to a purchase, right? Or a Facebook ad may just generate some awareness, or a billboard may just generate some awareness, for example, right? What's important to note here are the conversion rates, right? So if I think of spending $5,000 on a postcard, for example, mailing it to 50,000 households, and if I expect a 10% response rate where 5,000 people, you know, come in, well, I'm going to be very unhappy because the typical response rate for a postcard is something like 0.5%, right? So if you go in assuming 10% and you really only get 0.5%, you're setting yourself up for failure. There's not a chance in the world that that experiment's going to give you the results that you want. So I urge you, as you begin to think of your marketing tactics, to do the research from industry associations and agencies and so on, and get data that you can use for benchmarking. Don't guess, because if you're not well versed in these particular tactics, you're likely going to guess wrong. So this is just a good list. And when you get your deck, this will be in it so you can refer back to it at some later time. So let's take a look at, you know, how this kind of applies in real time, right? In reality. So if I were to do a postcard delivery, right? So one of those little postcards that comes in the mail with a packet of a dozen or 2 dozen other cards, I'm going to expect 1/10 to 1% response rate. So I'll just take an average here and assume about 0.5%. So if I send out 1,000 cards, maybe I'm going to get 5 people, and the resulting cost for that is going to be $70, right? For each of those customers. Not too bad, right? So I compare that now. Here's where some of these customer metrics come back into play. So I'm going to compare that cost per each customer acquired in this example to the value, the lifetime value that we looked at earlier, which was $170 over a 10-month period. So if it costs me $70 to get a customer that's going to give me a value of $170, that's a pretty good return, right? So I'm going to be pretty happy with that. Now, if I can find a way to ensure that that customer doesn't spend only $35, then I'm really not doing so well, right? We need that customer to spend as close to that $170 as possible. So this is why it's really important to track your customer activities over time as you're running your campaigns. Let's take a look at another example, a little bit more complex, right? So here we're going to look at a Facebook ad. So the cost to place the ad is $2, and the lead conversion rate, again, they're not purchasing at this point, they're just a lead, because they're aware, they're interested. And the customer may download a coupon, say a 15% coupon. So my cost, may download a coupon, and the conversion rate is 15%. Let me start that over again, right? Because I'm lost my train of thought. So the cost to place the ad is $2. That generates a conversion lead, and the customer may download a coupon. So that conversion rate from awareness to becoming a lead is 15%, right? So my cost per lead is $13. So $2 divided by 15% is $13. However, the likelihood that that person's actually going to purchase something is only 30%. So now I take my $13 and divide it by 30%, and I find that the real cost to acquire that customer, that paying customer, is $44. Still not bad, because that customer is going to deliver $170 in value. So it's effective, right? And it's even more effective than the postcard in the previous example. There are other tactics like email or blogs, right? And those are free, except for your time or the time that you pay someone to create them. But the execution of a blog or an email is generally free. So this is a list. I've given you a list of some of the examples in the benchmarks, but always do your research. You want to work from realistic expectations before you go out and spend the money on marketing tests that never really have a chance to succeed. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about ways that you can improve marketing effectiveness and better the conversion rates, improve the conversion rates that we were looking at, right? So if I can do something that gets me just one more person or 5 more people, how would that improve my sales and profit margins? So if I go back to the postcard example, if I can get my customer acquisition cost down to 35 instead of 70, that would be great. So as a marketer, what can I do to effectively impact those conversion rates? And remember, in order to change behavior, we really need to clearly understand our customers, their wants and their needs and their problems, i.e. the value proposition that's delivered through the products and services that we're offering. So there's 3 strategies that we might employ along the way in order to do that. And the first is targeting. So the advertising targeting must closely match your target audience, right? So instead of spending, for example, sending $20,000 postcards to 20,000 postcards to households in a zip code area where I might only get a 0.5% response, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a list, a direct marketing list of 5,000 households where the research has indicated that in those zip codes that I'm buying, the people have in fact eaten frozen yogurt and are frozen yogurt lovers. So I've targeted my audience much more effectively. And because I've done that, it's more likely that I'll get a much better than a 0.5% response from my advertising activity. The offering itself is critical as well, right? And so here we're now talking about the strength of the offering, i.e. the strength of that value proposition, the meaningfulness, the relevance of it, the value of it to your target customers. And the idea here is just to try to keep it as simple as possible. And in our case, we're not talking about just 20% off, but I'm talking about the convenience factor, the variability of the product that I'm offering so everybody gets their satisfaction. I'm talking about the health conscious nature of things, right? With respect to my yogurt business. So we want to be very clear on what that mind-opening thought is going to be, and make sure that it's followed up with a compelling call to action, right? So, come into our store at our grand opening and get 20% off your next purchase. That's a good call to action. The last one is the creative. And most frequently, this is the one that businesses tend to focus on because it's so visible, right? It's the easiest to try to address, but in reality, it gives you the least return in terms of trying to find a way to improve your overall conversion rates. Fine tuning a picture or creating a little bit more content on your website, changing the font, whatever it might be, changing your graphics, it's not going to give you the return that you need. So again, I go back to, if you think of your business model, knowing your customers and your customer segments, knowing them well, and knowing what keeps them up at night, the value proposition. Those two things are going to give you the biggest effect on your conversion rate. It's really it's just that simple. Targeting and refining the offering are going to be keys to success. So at this point, we've talked about building the powerful marketing concepts. We've identified what our customer metrics are. We've started to translate the sales plan into a customer plan. And we've looked at how to evaluate marketing ideas and how to begin to get some assessment of what those costs might be. So now we're going to dig into actually creating a customer acquisition plan for my yogurt business, right? So we've looked at several ways to acquire the customers, and some we might want to try. So I've created this plan, and if you look at the leftmost column, those are the different marketing vehicles that I found to be most propitious, that are going to have the biggest probability of success. And then across the top, I've begun to identify the customers, the quantity of customers, the relative percentage that each vehicle will generate, my costs per customer, what my startup costs are going to be. And what I mean by that is, even before I open the door to my yogurt store, I need to invest these monies to get my business off the ground. And then how much is it going to cost me, and how many new customers am I going to need in total, right? So this is the strategy that we're going to take, right? So in my location, in my store location, I'm making an assumption that 60% of my 1,250 customers, or 750, are going to come through the store, through the front door. Today, a lot of businesses will start online, but eventually they may add a storefront, or they may add some sort of a physical presence. A good example of that is Nordstrom's, right? Nordstrom's for quite some time had an e-commerce business where you could, buy your clothing and so on. But then if you needed to return or change a size, you can actually go into the store and make that adjustment. They actually created special outlets for that kind of thing. In general, I would say that, if you have a storefront, probably 25 to 50% of your customer base should be driven by the marketing, but 50 to 75% should be driven by your location, right? So here I just chose 60% to be conservative, although I'm hoping that 90% of my customers come in through the store. But I don't want to be disappointed, and I want to be sure that I don't run out of marketing dollars. So if it ends up being higher, great, I make more money, and I'm going to crush my business plan. So that said, I still need to get 500 customers to come from marketing activity, like my sorbet Facebook promo, or my new open card campaign. So I need to allocate, in this case, $11,000 to Facebook ads, and $17,750 to my direct mail flyer in order to achieve that remaining 500 customers at the start. So in general, I'm going to have to spend $28,750. So, that's a big number, but let me put it in perspective for you. If I'm opening up my yogurt store, I'm probably going to spend something like $50,000 to $75,000 in furniture and fixtures and equipment. And I'm also going to make a commitment for a lease that may cost, $60,000 a year for 5 years. So, which puts me in the range of a $400,000 to $500,000 commitment. Why would I put all of that at risk with a minimal marketing investment? So it's better that I should fund my marketing plan and start and maintain my sales goals. So it's really important when you begin to evaluate your startup costs for a new business that you include a component for marketing, for startup marketing. And this component, as clearly you'll see here, is going to be different from your ongoing marketing expenses, right? Because you have to maintain that 1,250 customers. And so again, I apply the metrics that I learned before. I look at my assumptions for relative percentage across the board, and I determine that I need $2,720 a month just to maintain my customer base to generate the $30,000 a month that I need. Okay, so that's essentially my customer acquisition plan. So how would you conduct your experiment to validate the assumptions that you've made in that plan, right? So kind of in summary, we're going to spend the minimum amount to test the idea. You're going to try to have some kind of a trackable redemption, say, for example, a coupon. If it's possible, test multiple creative concepts at any given point in time concurrently to see what works. For digital marketing, try it for 90 days or try it for 30 days and then pivot. Try it for another 30 days and then pivot, and so on, until you've been able to refine it or determine that it's just not going to work for you. And if you've got a physical location, ask your customers, how did they hear about you, and record the answers. If you're a business to business, a customer satisfaction survey or a customer interest survey, when you get a lead or when you have a purchase. Again, getting feedback from your customers is important as you continue down the road to refining your marketing. So, yeah. So make sure you test your experiments and be disciplined in the approach. All right, so we're back to our pro forma statement now, right? We've created our customer acquisition plan. We know how much it's going to cost to get us off the ground from a marketing perspective, and we know how much we need to maintain our customer base going forward, okay? So if I look at the program as it sits right now, you can see, or the pro forma, you can see that I've added the $2,720 into my monthly pro forma profit and loss. And by doing that, I'm generating a net profit of $3,780 or 13% of sales, which is really pretty darn good, okay? That said, if I didn't do my customer acquisition plan, and I relied solely on my store, which is only going to generate 750 customers versus the expected 1,250 customers, and I don't spend that money on marketing, I'm still going to lose money, right? I'm saving $2,720, but I'm not generating $30,000. And the worst part of that is the monies that are generated, gross profit, are not sufficient to cover my other costs. Right? So by not spending that $28,700 or so and not spending the monthly requirement, I'm going to be losing money on a monthly basis. So don't think that by not spending your marketing dollars, you're actually saving money, because in fact, you're not. So Let's go back to that initial marketing cost for a minute, and let's revisit that for a second. It's a one-time cost, right? And if you look at it very carefully, you'll see that I'm only spending $23 to acquire any one of those 1,250 customers. And again, I compare that to my lifetime value of 170. That's a really, really nice return. But I'm spending that money before I open the door because I need those 1,250 customers to be there when I open the door, right? So this expense needs to be in your cash flow estimates in your business plan, along with things like the $75,000 for equipment or your security deposit for your store. It's going to take some time to recoup those expenses, right? They're upfront costs. But at the end of the day, you actually absolutely need to make those investments to achieve your goal of $30,000 here in this case. So again, always be sure that your lifetime value per your average customer is significantly exceeding the cost of acquiring your customer. So in this particular plan, 170 versus 23 is a great plan. And it looks good. If I was paying $150 per customer and getting 170, that's not so good. So again, being disciplined and focused and testing and validating over time is going to be your key to long-term success here in this plan. So that said, we'll summarize real quick here. What are the 4 things that we need to do to ensure that we're going to be successful? So making sure that you're clear on who will buy and why. More specifically, what does that mean? Understanding your customer segments and understanding the value proposition that is relevant to those segments. What do they want? What do they need? And what problems are you solving for them, right? Understanding your 4 key customer metrics, right? You need to understand how to convert sales goals into customers' goals. And you need to be able to do this in a measurable and disciplined way, right? And that's how we come up with our sales plan and our monthly replacement numbers and so on. And ultimately, you want to use realistic marketing metrics that will help to develop that plan, underpin the plan, test it and improve it, and keeping records over the long term so that you can go back and modify and pivot where you might need to. So sorry if that was a little bit dry and overly mathematical, but at the end of the day, you got to know your numbers. And it's a great approach. I've used it a couple of times with some of my customers, and it does prove the results. So that said, that is the end of the show for me at this point. Hopefully you'll be receiving a survey for today's presentation. We value any feedback. And if you have any questions, now's a good time.
If you have any questions for Scott, feel free to put them into the Q&A and I will ask them for you. No questions so far, Scott. This, I do have to say, Scott, this is like the 2nd or 3rd time I've seen you do this webinar, and I have to say it's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
That you do, because I don't understand math, and I know you need these equations, and having you explain that always helps me out. So thank you for another great job.
No,
We do have a question. What should you expect to pay for marketing services?
So that's a big question that essentially we just answered in the last hour and a half. You don't know what to expect to pay until you go through the analyses that we just talked about. You've got to start with a sales plan and what is it that you're going to need to do to underpin that sales plan. And that's exactly what this presentation just talked about. How do you figure out what you need to pay? How do you need to figure out what your budget is going to be, how it's related to your sales target? What are the tactics that you're going to use which tactics are going to be successful for you. And so when you do this analysis, you'll begin to get a sense of what you need to pay for your particular business.
He was asking more along the lines for like what you expect to pay for marketing services. Like if you went to a marketing agency or a digital marketing agency, what % of your budget should you plan on spending with an agency?
What % of your budget should you plan to send on an agency? Again, it's so hard for me. Agencies charge by the project. They might charge by the hour. It's so hard to pin it down to a given number. It's really going to depend on what you need to underpin your sales. I'm sorry to be obtuse about it, but it's just not a number that I can throw off the top of my head because there's so many variables in the conversation.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, Scott, coming from a digital agency background. But one thing I can tell you is always spend way more than $100 per month on your. If you're paying an agency or you're working with somebody to do content and ads and things, whatever you like, what Scott was talking about spending on your ad spend, that is always in addition to whatever you pay to the agency for the actual work.
Yeah, I think there used to be something like a 15 or a 16% markup on the cost of the ad spend, something like that.
Yeah, it varies from agency to agency. And like you said, depending on the goals and the project. And
but I'll tell you what, though, if you go to an agency with an analysis like this, you're much more likely to get a realistic goal, a realistic budget from that agency. If you go in with just general ideas, you're going to get general responses.
that's very true.
Okay, I think this is Kristen. I think we have answered questions and probably can wrap this up then. I want to thank Scott Ladin for presenting. Thank you very much. It's always useful information that you share with us. I also want to thank our interpreters from RIT, NTID, Rachel and Byron. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.